All right, it's the end of the session. I am here. Goose is over here. Casper's over there. They're both off camera, and I'm just going to kind of summarize what we went over in this session. The fundamental thing we were really going over is how to read dog body language and cut off signals. In this case, Goose has only been in the house about a month. And because, again, he probably was captured by animal control, they were putting leashes and slip leads over his head. I think that, and then taking him to, meet people he didn't want to know or to the shelter or whatever. So I think he developed a negative association. The guardians were, like a lot of people, thinking, I have to put the leash on to take him for a walk, and he's protesting. And so, kind of Kevlar gloves or different things like that. But a bite is a communication. It's saying, I really don't like what you're doing. And so if we can recognize that and learn how to read our dog's body language, that really helps us. So when the dog gives the first indication it's uncomfortable by baring its teeth or turning away or whatever it is, and we stop, the dog doesn't have to get to a bite. So one of the things, before I forget, because I often forget this, the guardians were disagreeing when Casper, who's a little bit of a food guarder, growls. A growl, I always interpret as the dog's way of saying, I feel uncomfortable or I disagree. So if I tell my partner I feel uncomfortable and they tell me to be quiet, that's not going to make me feel more comfortable. Now we look at barking or growling or some of these things as nuisance behaviors, but all behavior is trying to achieve something. So I'd like you to kind of keep in the back of your mind, if my dog is offering a behavior and it's trying to achieve something, how can I allow or create a scenario where it can achieve what it wants without offering the behavior that I don't want? And then after we arrange that and they practice that enough times, the dog kind of defaults to whatever that thing is. Hey, buddy. All right, so we started off the session like I usually do by going over fundamentals. We went over marker words and how to use and load marker words. By the time the guardians see this video, they should have already done it. So for you guys who are listening in the room with me right now, I want to make sure that you are loading the word each. So both of you have a clicker now and you both have yes. So what I want you to do is one of you takes the dog and just goes to this side of the house. Yes, treat. Take a couple steps. Yes, treat. You want to basically yes and treat in every room in the house so the dog knows this works in the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, the family room, etc. So you want to do about 12 to 20 treats on 6 separate occasions. By the time you get done with this weekend, you should be done with that. So 6 times each of you for each dog with yes, and 6 times with a click, yes. And the click and the yes are the same thing. The clicker is better, but the most important thing is we're clicking within a second of the within maximum of 2 seconds of the dog doing the thing, but really want to time it out the instant they do it. Now, after that, we went over hand targeting. I have a video for that one, but teaching the dog to touch his nose to your hand. And that exercise I go through with a lot of my clients. In this case, it really set up the exercise in the video above, reaching towards him, because now a hand is not necessarily looked at as a negative thing. Interacting with a hand is a good positive thing. If you forget how to do that one, make sure you watch the video on that one. I would practice the hand targeting maybe 3 times a day. Practice sessions I usually recommend are about 2 to 3 minutes long, maximum. Always end on a positive repetition. That's supremely important because that's the memory the dog's going to have for the whole exercise. Hey, buddy. And we'll see if we can get somebody on camera here. Hey. You want to come up here? There you go. You're going to have to work for it. There you go. This is the Goose. Goose, come here, sit. Now remember that imaginary rubber band technique. So I want to lure him into a down. I'm going to keep this against his nose. If I pull away, the rubber band pulls it back to his mouth. And so if I'm trying to lure him into a down, even if he only goes this way, yes, and I release that treat. That's part of the down. That's a little bit rough on my finger. But I'm using the higher value treat, which is why he was a little bit, I really want to get that. And that's Stewart's freeze-dried beef liver. It'll come in big chunks. If you get it, chop it down into little pieces like this. You want to use, when it comes to treat, you want to use the smallest amount of treat that you possibly can that'll achieve the results that you're looking for. Yeah, buddy. Yes. And so right there, he gave me a little bit of a cutoff signal. I was scratching his butt. He got a little stiff. And if you're not sure, just intercede anyways. It's better to be more cautious and wrong than overzealous and cautious and right and overzealous and wrong. All right. Let me see. After we did the hand targeting, remember, I would like to have his word is maybe boop. His word is smash. So that way we can use that to call the dogs away from each other, since he has a little bit of a guarding issue. And right there, the guardian, he was getting up. The guardian's using kind of a version of the hand targeting to get him down. And we only just introduced it. It's already working. All right. So, after that, we went over dog body language and cutoff signals. So cutoff signals for dogs, and I'm going to link that above, but include ducking the head, turning away, for him baring his teeth, getting stiff, looking with big open eyes, the tail going up, breathing heavy or holding their breath. That's okay. This is just for you guys. And then also sometimes they get hackles. This is the hair standing up on his spine and on his butt. They're in containers. He's not going to be able to get them anyway. It's not a big deal. And so that's a sign of arousal. That's like us getting goose pimples. It doesn't mean he's going to be aggressive, but it might mean that he's a little bit more aroused. So I watch out for those sort of things. All right. And so for body language, I'd like you to get in a habit of learning how to read your dog's body language. So he has kind of a one up, one down ear. And so what I want to do is I do it in chunks. First of all, I look at the dog's head. And that's okay. Maybe the guardians are both quivering because they don't like him getting up here. He's like, I'm going to get the bag. We'll put that over there for you for later, buddy. So basically, when I look at the head, nose going up is more of a positive, or a confident. Insecure is nose going down. There we go. And that was very good. Good job, buddy. And also, when dogs do an interaction, like right there, he is looking for the treats. Goose is a guarder. They both got on the floor. Goose got down to go over to his mom to get the treats because she reached out, and he started kind of going that direction. Goose went, and he stopped, and then Goose went away. I said yes and petted him. I want to make sure that when the dog does make a good decision, sometimes we take that for granted. That's really important, especially if it's something you're working on rehabilitating. Make sure you recognize that. Use the marker words. They know that's what you want. Then follow it up with a pet or a treat. All right, so for body language, I also look at the ears. Are the ears up? Are they to the side? Are they back? Usually when they're more of a cutoff signal or they're uncomfortable, it's going to be back. If it's more alerting or confident or territorial, it's going to be more up. More humble and approachable is often more to the side. Now he has up ears. Casper, I think, they both have up ears. All right, so the next thing I do is I look at the dog's breathing. Are they breathing heavy? Are they holding their breath? Or are they breathing normally? Are they leaning towards something and leaning away from it? Is the tail up? Is it shooting off the spine? Is it hanging down? Is it tucked? If it's tucked, that's insecure. I'm going to make sure I remove whatever it is or take the dog away from whatever it is that might be causing them to feel uncomfortable. Yes. And we'll talk about celebrating in a sec. Then I look for, and also for the eyes. Are the pupils dilated and are the eyes big as saucers? Sleepy eyes like this is a good positive thing. Also staring. Staring is not necessarily a good thing in the dog world. Like a little look is okay, but a stare for several seconds, not good. Dogs are also what I call wiggly and jiggly. If you see a dog that's just stiff, or they go from being wiggly to stiff, that's a big warning. Dogs also usually go from an open mouth to a closed mouth. They can also have just a closed mouth for no reason, but if I'm a dog, I'm like, I see something over here I don't like, that's a big warning. Most of us think the warning is the bite or the barking or the lunging. That's at the end. Now it can happen just like that, but we want to work up to that so the dog, we recognize the early signals so the dog doesn't have to go to the next signal. And dogs practice everything they do, being aggressive, being fearful, being obedient, laying down, whatever it is. So the more that they practice deferring to each other and being amicable, the more they're likely to continue doing that. And so that's why I want the guardians to make sure that they understand if they see the dogs are staring at each other, giving them uncomfortable body language, we try to call them away. If we can't, go pick one of them up. As long as they're not biting you, we want to interrupt that so they say, don't practice doing that behavior. I'm just laughing. Casper's giving a little bit of a cutoff signal, but his mom was holding him because it was almost a little thing, and I'm doing this video. Sometimes we have to make little concessions. All right, and now he's like, okay, now I'm content. She's rubbing me. All right, so after that, let me see. We also went over celebrating, which is what she's doing right now. So Casper just kind of oscillated and went and laid down right here. She said yes and started petting him. Yes, again, being the marker word, letting the dog know what we did something we like. The more that you reward your dog for desired behaviors, the more they're likely to offer them. The more we give our dogs attention for undesirable behaviors, the more they will offer them. We get to choose. This is how the mistake that most people make with their dogs is they give more attention for unwanted behaviors correcting their dog, then they reward them when the dog voluntarily offers desired behaviors. So try to get in the habit of every time they sit, come to you, lay down, go to the dog bed, give you eye contact, drop something, drink water, whatever it is. So things that are desirable, when your dog does them on its own, say yes, and then pet them on their butt or under their chin within about 2 seconds maximum. After a while, your dog will start to figure this out and will start sitting to ask for attention. And when it does that, then you can say yes and pet them for whatever it is. That's a very polite body mechanic. Now, celebrating, use that word. Say celebrate to each other. If you see your partner forgot to do this pet, celebrate, yes, and then you pet. And then you can ask later on what it was if you want. You don't really need to ask. You're gonna get the clicker now, huh? He's like, well, this got me a lot of treats earlier. Okay, so he's got the clicker. If I give him attention, try to take it away from him, I might make this a bad thing. There's not really much. I mean, my hands were handling treats. The clicker probably smells good, and that's what he's doing right now. He's not trying to chew on it. Sometimes you have to pick and choose your battles. This isn't worth me interceding with because I know, and now he's trying to mouth it a little bit, but I know that it's not going to be reinforcing for him. So I'm not going to expend the energy and accidentally train him to try to steal the clicker. Now, if he does have something you don't want him to have, I would get a high value treat, show him that you have one. If he has the object in his mouth, when he drops it, put the treat in his mouth, then show me you have another one, drop it a foot away, then drop about 3 or 4 over there without Casper being around. Then he goes away from and then you could pick up the object. He doesn't recognize that you removed it. Now, if you do remove it, you do usually want to replace it with something of equal or greater value. I didn't give the, these are clickers. I didn't give the Guardians these because they have a resource guarding problem. But these are from our friends over at Barkworthy's. These are collagen sticks, which are great things for dogs to chew on. That might be something I give the dogs to chew on opposite sides of the boundary. Or if you want to have the dogs in the room, you can tether a leash. So I take a leash like this. This is a nice long 6-foot leash. If this is the leg of the chair, I run it around here. I run this through the loop. And now I've made a tether. The dog can only move for 6 feet around from wherever it is. So if you have Casper tethered here, and then you have him tethered over there, and they can't reach each other, that can help the humans feel secure. They had a trainer came in that had them kind of accidentally flooding the dogs by trying to feed them together. And one of them has a resource guarding problem. That's not a good way. You have to treat it, not just putting them together. That's called flooding. And so what I'd recommend for feeding, and I'll get back to the other stuff, is again, just having the Guardians feed the dogs separately, maybe in different rooms or at the very distance, a long ways away from each other if they want to be able to have them see each other. But it's not important for dogs to learn to eat together. It's just not. And so I wouldn't really worry about that. I would focus more of my energy on being handled as well as maybe the resource guarding issues as opposed to trying to get them to eat together. Okay, so getting back to, we talked about celebrating is rewarding the dog when it does desired behaviors. And again, right there, getting on the counter. If I said no or try to redirect him, getting on the counter is a great way to get attention. So, but when he got down, sit, yes. He wants a treat. But I asked him to do something else. Not just he gets down and I say yes and pet him for getting down. Well, the only way to get that down reward is being up first. So when they're doing something you don't want, if you wait for them to get out of it or use the pause interrupter, which we'll talk about in a sec, then when they get down, then you ask them to do something else and you're rewarding them for the something else, not the other thing. So manners is, is what we want to do is reward the dog when it's demanding attention in a way that's not as polite as we'd like. So if the dog paws at you, this is not dominance. This is just saying I want some attention. Or if it's pawing at you or barking or saying, nudging you, hey, pet me, pet me, pet me. Petting your dog is always fine, but whatever your dog is doing before you pet them is what you're rewarding. So the dog nudging you and you pet them, you're teaching the dog, nudge me to ask for a pet. Instead, when the dog nudges you, tell it to sit one time. If it sits, say yes and pet it on its shin. If it doesn't sit, go back, lean back in the chair and go back to doing what you're doing. The more you say it, the less you mean it. So don't repeat yourself and lower the value of the cues. Just go back to doing what you're doing. We don't have to punish the dog for them to learn. He's not getting the attention that he wanted because he didn't do what we asked, which will make him more likely to sit, especially if we're celebrating every time he sits. And so learning to read, these are two sides of the same coin. So celebrating is rewarding the dog when it does things that we like without us asking. Say the marker word and pet or give a treat. Manners is if the dog is asking for attention in a way that's maybe not as polite as we'd like. We tell the dog to sit. So right there, you tell him to sit.
Sit.
One time. He's just staring at her. So she just put the treat down and she's going to break eye contact and stuff. Now he did it there, so he's learning, so she can go ahead and give him a treat. Normally I say sit, and if they don't sit within 3 seconds, I'm just on to the next thing, and then there's no more reward. He's learning now, so, and this has been a long day. We worked with him primarily, so we'll give him another one. Casper's giving a little side eye saying, this is BS, man. I should be getting those treats.
Yes.
All right, so let me see. What else did we go over? Before I forget, we did go over some tips for resource guarding. So resource guarding, I'm just going to give you the summation of it, but let me know if you have questions. This is a more complex and potentially more dangerous thing. So if I am one of the guardians with Casper and the other guardian is approaching and Casper starts, well, I guess it would be Goose. So you're sitting here with Goose and then the other guardian approaches and Goose kind of starts baring his teeth. Stop where you're at. Take note of how far. Let's say you're 10 feet away. That person should walk out of sight or far enough away where Goose stops baring his teeth. They grab some treats and they either give me the treats to give to Goose or they can toss them. Probably be better if I'm delivering them. And then they stop, they reapproach, but this time they stop at 11 or 12 feet. A foot or two prior to where he offered the first warning of baring his teeth. And then I give a treat or somebody throws a treat, then they walk away and reapproach from a slightly different angle. So what we're doing, we're stopping at 12 feet each time. And yes. And then after a while, after we do each one of those approaches maybe 2 or 3 times, then we go to from 10 feet to 9 feet and then deliver a treat. Walk away, repeat. And gradually get to 8 feet and 7 feet. When we get to 6 feet, he kind of bares his teeth again. We stop, walk away. Maybe we do another 1 or 2 at 7 feet so we get that practice without any cutoff signals. Gradually get closer and closer and closer. And eventually the dog kind of thinks when the human approaches, that means I'm going to get a treat. And we've changed the emotional response from a negative or a guarding into an indifferent or neutral response or a positive response. And so that's the best way to deal with it because that way we're not punishing him. You don't ever want to punish a dog for growling or barking like I mentioned because the dog will just go straight to a bite. We like the growl. We like the baring the teeth. It tells us where we're at and it gives us the ammunition and the ability to make changes so the dog does not have to go to a bite. All right, we also went over exercise. The guardians do a good job here on exercising the dogs. But I showed them cookie in the corner, which is, I have a video for that one. Introduction to scent games. Make sure you find 2 or 3 free scent games. Now, if you really get into it, like it, you might take one of those courses and get the dog doing scent work and barn hunts and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's just a nice way to burn a little energy for them. The dog guardians here are doing a good job of enrichment. I do like feeding dogs out of a Tricky Trainer Omega Paw Tricky Treat Bowl, but that can only be with kibble. You really don't want to do that with the farmer's dog and stuff like that. The dogs here probably don't necessarily need to eat about snuffle mat, but if you want, you can try to do that. You just have to wash it. I think, again, just separating him during mealtime. Letting him sniff on walks. For him, he's not as big of a sniffer on a walk. So you might go out ahead of time on the walk, maybe a day not as hot as today, with some shredded Swiss cheese. Sprinkle a little cachet over here in some grass. Go in the next house, maybe on this side of the sidewalk, we do a little bit more, and then lead him to it. So after a while, he's like looking for more shredded cheese on the walks. He's sniffing. Sniffing is a displacement behavior. It's something dogs do to calm each other down. It's very relaxing. It's natural, and it actually burns a lot more energy on walks than walking alone. So those are good things for him to do, and also having the find it cue that comes to a cookie in the corner. If the dogs does Casper have a problem with other dogs? Okay, a lot of people do, and then we use the find it game to redirect the dogs, but you guys don't have that problem. Let me see, what else do we go over? We went over the positive interrupter. So I'd like each dog to have a different positive interrupter sound. So I think that puppy, puppy, puppy seemed to work better for Casper, where I was going for the Goose.
Yeah.
And so what it is you would, whichever those sounds are, you say puppy, 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 give him a treat. Then walk a couple steps in the neck. Just the same thing we did in the loading exercise. You want to keep on doing that about 12 to 20 treats until you say puppy, 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 or beep, 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 and the dog snaps up and looks at your head. So once that's the case, and that's why I want different positive after sounds and different cues for touch. Because if Goose is near Casper and Casper gives him a baring of teeth and Goose doesn't move away, I can say, and you can't see it off camera, I don't think, but Goose is coming over here to touch his nose to my hand. I've redirected him away from either getting in the trash or messing with Casper or whatever the case may be. So each one has a different word, and each one has a different word just for the touch. I'm not saying they have to have different cues for everything, but just for that one, so that way you can call them away from each other separately. Also remember to come up with a list of the official command cues and say vocabulary to each other if you're using a different version of the word. Come here, vocabulary. Oh, thank you, come. So it just makes it easier for the dogs. Let me see, what else did we cover? Anything else you want me to go over?
I think that covers it.
Okay. Now, dog training and behavior modification is not a linear process. It's not going to always get better every day. You're going to have off days and on days. When you're doing these exercises, make sure you set your dogs up for success. Exercising him a little bit before we practice the hand approaching or the leash approaching game or hand targeting or whatever might help. Also, be aware of your environment. I was at the beach the other day working with a client, and their dog didn't like meeting other dogs. And there was a dog, we were having problems finding dogs. We found a dog, and she was just like, she's trying to introduce the dog. I'm like, no, hold on, wait. And she goes, but the dog's gonna walk away. We had a helicopter overhead. There was a construction truck backing up. There was a baby in a stroller that was screaming. And there was a couple of kids that were just farting around but being very loud. We filter all those things out. Those are contributing factors for dogs. So if you have a baby crying and then we're trying to do the touching exercise, that's gonna be something that's probably gonna influence it and not in our benefit. So try to pick and choose your spots properly. And there you go. The guardian just was about to pet on top of that, and he recognized and went underneath. And one of the guardians didn't say the marker word, so the other guardian reminded. So you guys are going to help each other out, which is great. So for practice sessions, I usually recommend, just as prophylactically, I usually recommend practicing about 3 times a day in like 1 to 3 minute practice sessions. And right there, did he give you a little bit of a cutoff signal? Perfect. So he communicated, Dad wanted to pet him, and he communicated, I didn't like that. And Dad stopped, and he got what he wanted. He didn't have to go any further. That engenders more trust in Dad. Dad listened to what I was saying, and that makes me probably more likely to feel comfortable being petted with Dad later on. Now, eventually, you can do something where you're like holding the treat to the dog's lips, and we were doing reaching for the hand. You can do that, and then reach and pet them a little bit while they're chewing on that treat. That's where the expression "don't bite the hand that feeds you" comes from, because we've got something in our hand. But reading those cutoff signals, I think, is going to be is going to help more than anything else. And I think for him, sometimes when we reach to pet him, he's a street dog at some point. He's not used to getting affection and things like that. So as he gets more settled in, I think he'll be more and more comfortable and confident in that, especially now that you know how to read his body language. Now, if you have questions, a couple things. Watch this video once a week until when you watch this video, there's nothing new. If you're still having problems at that point, let me know. We can set up a 1-hour follow-up session if we need one. I don't really think you're probably going to need one. If you have questions along the way, text me. I don't charge for phone calls or text. I want you to call and reach out to me. I have hundreds of 5-star reviews because I love what I do and I want to help you. So don't wait. Let me know as soon as it comes, because I don't want you to practice bad mechanics. Let me think. What else? But come here, buddy. We'll get you back up here. We're going to sign off anyways. Ready? There you go. Yeah, you're going to have to get that one on your own. All right. Well, Goose is going to stay off camera. Or excuse me, Casper is going to stay off camera. Sit. Oh, that reminds me. 2 other things. Yes. So don't ever put a dog into a sit if it feels uncomfortable. If it's uncomfortable or it's lunging, all you want to do is increase distance. So make sure you do that. You're going to go straight for the mother load. I'll use this to keep you here. Now, the other thing is, I'd like you to, when I met him, I had his guardian bring me outside. I left a trail of treats. At first, the treats are about every 8 inches. After about 4 of those, then they came about every foot, then about every 2 feet. Then when we got close to going around the corner, I had about every 3 inches or so. I wanted him to have a full treats in his mouth when he turned around the corner and saw me there. I was sitting down. Front-facing, remember, front-facing approach is confrontational for dogs. So I was sitting down, and he actually approached me from this angle. And so the treat trail led up to me, and then I offered a treat off to my side, let him lick it off. And I kept my hand there, did that 2 or 3 times. If he gets stuck, you can throw a treat behind him, and that causes him to move away and get a little bit more distance. And then he was approaching me outside, where there's a lot of distractions and an open space. If I come into the house, normally he barks like crazy. He did not bark at me once, because we set him up for success. So what I would have you do is, if you're going to have anybody come to visit, I'm going to have you come up here one more time. If you have somebody come to visit, have them come and visit outside or meet outside, and then go for a short little walk together. Give them some good treats. Have them ask him to sit. Sit. So for me, yes, I equate how comfortable a dog is by how many moves it takes them to get to and do a run. This is 1 move. Well, yeah, he's sitting. He's laying down 2 moves, laying down side to side 3 moves. So I ask for a sit as a test to see how comfortable the dog is. So when you have a guest come over, I would have your guest and you go out for a little mini walk 3 or 4 houses down the road. Have him just give a treat, just drop a couple treats at first. But after a couple minutes, sit, yes, and then give him a treat. We want him to practice listening to the person and being rewarded for listening to the person that has the tasty treats that led me up to him. And then what I do is when we come back in, I'm giving a treat, like a couple of treats as we're walking up. It's really important to have one right outside the door. And as soon as you come through the door, another treat. Because when you go from inside to outside, we take that for granted, but there's a big change in dynamics there. So the guest is asking him to sit, and as soon as he comes in, sit again, yes, treat. Now the dog has learned if I listen to this person outside to get a treat, I can listen to him inside to get a treat. And then the humans here are going to tell the guests what their cutoff signals are, what to look for, what to not look for. So not going to pet on top of the head or do all the other things that we don't like. All right, well, this is my buddy Goose. Casper is asleep over there, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.